we recommend that you watch the movie before watching our episodes. Hi guys, welcome to yet another perspective. We are back here with another movie this time. This one I am especially excited about because I have been a student of psychology, and this movie lies right at the intersection of the theory of psychology and storytelling. So I'm really excited to talk about it, and I'm sure Swati is too. Swati, how excited are you to talk about the movie Inception?
I've loved this movie. I've loved this movie, and figuratively and literally, it talks about the layers that we talk about unlayering, also within the psyche. So, whether to look at it as a cinematic journey or the unfolding of the layers of a human mind, it just is a beauty in both ways. So, yeah,
Right.
I hope I'm able to do justice to it.
Right. So it is a really complex movie to understand, right? When I first looked at it, each time that you look at it, there's something new for you to discover. So what do you think, Swati, is the movie about?
So the movie, of course, is about Cobb. Cobb, who is dealing with a very big situation that he can't go back home to his children. He's stuck. And Fisher. So the journeys that we are talking about is both of them are going through a very similar journey. Both of them are dealing with the real world in a manner that they are not able to look at life from their own independent perspective. They just have to be dealing with as and how days come. I have to lie low here, or I will, after things die down, figure out what next to do. I can figure out my own, I can square things with COBOL engineering. So it's more like on the go. It doesn't feel like both of them are alive. So in the attempt to help Fisher, who's feeling that his father is disappointed with him and he misses and craves that childhood a lot, Cobb is also wanting to go back to the days of innocence and freedom, where if he wants to be with his children, he can be with his children. So in helping Fisher, how Cobb unfolds a lot of his own layers. Now, while Cobb is aware, and that's where we talk about intellectualization versus experiential. So while Cobb is aware that in the subconscious, emotions is a lot more powerful than thought or intellect or any logic that applies there, yet in his attempt in the way he's living life, he's trying to keep his emotions buried. He's trying to keep them locked. He's trying to keep them separate. So when Arthur asks him, what is Maul doing here? Are you okay? When Seto asks him, is everything all right? He constantly keeps saying, I'm okay. Because he doesn't want, one, to address the emotion himself, and second, to be able to know the intersection of his intelligence and emotion. Right? And that's where Ariadne comes into the picture, as to she guides and guards his emotions throughout, so that he doesn't actually split emotion and intellect. And in finding the meeting ground of his deepest emotions, they are able to help Fisher find his childhood and Cobb find his freedom.
Right.
So finally, it's about Cobb and Fisher. In helping Fisher, how Cobb is helping himself.
Right. So, like you said, Cobb also knows that the subconscious functions on emotion, and emotion is primary. He also says when they're discussing how to plant the idea in Fisher's mind, Cobb says that the subconscious functions on emotion. So, we need to find that primary emotion. Why do we, even in our everyday lives, and Cobb as a character in the movie, why do we identify ourselves with the intellect more than the emotion? Then, like the divide between reason versus emotion, why is the weighing scale tipping more on the reason side?
One, we are taught that way. Fortunately or unfortunately, all education is around intelligence, thoughts, ideas. So there's very little that happens around emotion formally. Whatever we learn as part of emotion is basically in the community that we've grown up. Our family, the school and its ideology, our religious structures, our political structures. So emotion is something which, one, is not very visible and tangible as much as a thought and an idea would be.
Mm-hmm.
Second, emotion is very experiential, and it can be so deep that it is constantly overwhelming. So you don't need to be overwhelmed only by pain or problems. You could be overwhelmed with a lot of love and gratitude also. You could be overwhelmed with feeling obliged also. You could be overwhelmed by feeling committed and then feeling, oh my God, my freedom is gone because I'm committed. Right? So emotion is always a very physical experience. And you can't transition it the way you want it.
Right.
So if there is a thought which is troubling you too much, by rewording it in your mind or by doing certain things of changing the format in the way the thought is occurring to you, we can get the reason to be more in control.
Right.
Emotions cannot be in control.
Right.
And the more emotions cannot be in control, very few of us know how to take it along. Because it's such a powerful flowing energy. We just believe we need to block it, then only we'll be walking, otherwise we'll get swept away. Right? So the fear of being swept away makes us not take advantage even of the positive emotional energy. And because the guilt in the movie that Cobb has is so overpowering, because when Arthur talks about Moll, he says she was lovely. It's just the projection of her.
Right.
That his guilt in his own might makes it so overwhelming that he's constantly only, gripped by his guilt.
Right.
So he loved his wife. He was able to see that the real wife is gone. Everything. Emotionally, logically, he knew everything. But the guilt would just supersede everything else. That's why we prefer to believe that reason is logical. So if we talk about Carl Jung, he was the person who mentioned in rational and irrational context. He says thought can be more irrational because it is trained, it is guided. Emotions are a lot more rational because they are instinctual, they are universal. Right? You and I could belong to different cultures. Both of us will feel pain. But one culture could say expressing pain is a sign of weakness. One person could say crying is a way to express pain. Another person could say it's okay to scream. Right? So how you express it is guided by culture, but the experience of the emotion is always very natural.
Right.
And humans like control. So emotions become a problem because of that.
Right. So as you were talking about thought and emotion, and what you mentioned about Cobb and Fisher being similar in a way, I was also thinking about how Cobb defends himself from his emotion and how Fisher does. Cobb, is that why, because he's so overwhelmed, is that why Cobb does not like to go inside his own mind and he does something which is like infiltrating another people's consciousness and minds to plant an idea, to retrieve something from there, because he's so afraid to go inside his own mind and face that guilt? And Fisher, in a similar way but differently, has such strong defense mechanisms against his shame that he feels because of his father. That army that you see, which is controlling or protecting his subconscious, those are his defense mechanisms, which is in a way similar to dealing with the core emotion, Cobb's guilt and Fisher's shame, but in a different way. Would that be the right translation of what you said?
Yes. So the way Cobb does it is he's made this one building of memories and he keeps visiting that building in his own personal time because that's the only way he can be with Moll and he doesn't want to let go, right? So the journey he has to take internally, but it's so overwhelming that he's not able to use the outside from his inner knowledge or experience, right? So if he is learning in the process of dealing with his own emotions by stealing other people's thoughts, that would still be introspection. But what Cobb is doing is he's guarding his own self and he's doing the same work with other people's minds, right? So that is a form of projection in the sense that To protect your own self, you reflect it outside. Cobb's learning experience needs to be Ariadne because he is just so guarded with his own thing. But as far as Fisher is concerned, he needed some consolation to come from outside because his shame is a very childlike shame. So if we talk about Erik Erikson, he mentioned the first experience of shame in a child happens during the toilet training times between the ages of 1.5 and 3, where the child begins to doubt their own abilities, saying, I can do it, I can't do it. So it could be something as simple as taking a roti to the parent, a 2-year-old can do. Taking garam dal to the dining table is something a child cannot do. So the child is still experimenting with what they can and they can't do. So self-doubt begins to happen. And at the same time, this is right, this is wrong, you should be like this, you shouldn't be like this. It's begun to be told to the child quite often. So shame also develops, right? It's the right time for the shame. I'm not saying parents shouldn't do it. So Fisher's innocence and childlikeness keeps him more honest with his own emotion. And Cobb's being, I want to be this father, the parent psyche in him is a lot more stronger than the innocence of a child. So that's why for him, it is a lot more saying, I don't need to be wrong and I need to do the right thing. Right? So that need to do the right thing and not what he wants is something that Cobb is struggling with.
Right. And both of them find a resolution in a way at the right time towards the end of the movie.
Yes. And if you see, for Fisher, they had to use a lot more drama. Eames had to become Browning. Eames had to become the beautiful girl, whoever stole his wallet. Eames had to become, different versions of Eames to be able to engage with him. Because for Fisher, the learning needed to come from outside. But a very student-like psyche of, I have the knowledge within me, I just need to use it better. So the way they deal with Cobb's journey is intelligence.
Okay.
Ariadne again and again kind of stopping him, telling him to deal with it, face it, talk to people about it and all of that. So that's a more aware journey. It's not happening with forgery. Right? But Fisher, because it's a childlike innocence, it's happening with a lot of other drama and not knowledge as an experience. So the paths in which both of them find resolutions is shown very, very characteristic of the child psyche and the adult psyche. So, yeah.
So, Swati, you spoke about the different paths that Cobb and Fisher had to take to grow in their own journeys, which is reminding me of this scene where Cobb goes down to the basement where he's talking to Mal, and she says that I want you to stay with me, and he's telling her what you are experiencing is not real and you're not real, and she asks him whether what he's experiencing is real in fact, because he's consumed by this paranoia that there is an army of policemen following him and he's been wanted in different government agencies, which is what Mal reminds him of. And that brings me to the last scene when he gets off at the airport and he shows his passport. He's allowed entry into his country, which means that the paranoia is now gone after he's dealt with the guilt. So you think all of that was just a build-up of his guilt and his defenses?
If you see psychologically, yes. If you want to look at it politically, maybe because people believe that he had killed his wife and there could be a possibility that he is a wanted person. But if you look at it psychically, yes, that would be absolutely true. There's a Hindi saying ki sawan ke ande ko sab hara hi hara dikhta hai. What that basically means is, if at all the lens of Fisher was shame, all he could see is self-doubt and disappointment that others would have in him. And there was only this very little part of him which believed that Uncle Peter was good authority, right? Other than that one good authority, he just didn't feel he fit into this world that his father had built up. So even if other people are not disappointed in him, usko sabki aankhon mein wo disappointment dikhega. With Cobb, if you go to see, he had planted an idea in Maul's head. So he does have something to feel guilty about, but he surely doesn't become a criminal wherein we are saying that he needs to be punished for Maul having killed herself. So it is reinforced by the outside world. Miles reminding him, I did not teach you to be a thief. And him saying that, listen, I couldn't have found more legitimate ways to use what you taught me. And the grandmother being very upset, right? And saying she doesn't even want to talk to him. Or she's telling the children that he might not come back ever, right? So that disappointment that his adults are also showing in him, he would then end up seeing that in every face. So other than Arthur, who's completely on his side, he wouldn't be able to rely that much on anybody else at that point of time. So if you see, he has these very select few people. Them also he does not trust with his real emotions. So he needs to protect himself from everybody. So whenever you say, I need to protect myself, there needs to be an enemy. So that enemy then is seen in every eye, which is around, which is looking at you. That could be concern. It could still be looking at judgment. It could be care. It could still be looked at as somebody approaching for an attack. Right? So yes, for Fisher it was shame. So disappointment is what he will see. And for Cobb it was guilt. So attack is what he will see.
And how is the guilt attached to Cobb's character not being able to or wanting to see his children's faces each time they're shown in the movie?
So whenever you feel guilty, automatically you feel you don't deserve the beauty that you have in your life. And what could be more beautiful for a father than being able to see his children and happy place, you know? So he's seeing his children in a happy place. They are playing in the mud. They look very relaxed. So he's not seeing his children in a threatened scenario. But his guilt will not let him feel deserving of the beauty of his children into his own life. And that's why he will also not be able to see his children's faces.
Right. Okay. Swati, so this entire movie, we are constantly on the edge of reality and projection, right? How do you differentiate between the two? How do we know right now we're not in someone's projection or we're not somebody's projection and this is the reality? Which also the director leaves open in the end, right? When the totem is still spinning. So we don't know whether Cobb is in a reality or this is still his imagination. So how can you tell?
And I guess we don't need to tell that. What we need to know that there is an inner reality and that is also as real as the outer reality. So if I'm feeling guilty, that is the reality. It's not like I'm feeling the guilt and that's not the real thing. Yeah. So a lot of times when in trying to think positive, we try to give others the benefit of doubt. Okay. What we miss out on is the lens with which we are reading them. Right. So in giving the benefit of doubt also we would have judged them in some form and then we are giving the benefit of doubt. So what we need to recognize in this part of it is to come back and say that reality and dreams are part of reality. How you engage when you're engaging with your own inner reality and how you engage when you're engaging with another person, they become interchangeable. Now what you need to recognize what the other person understands of you is also part of their inner reality.
Right.
So if they think you are judgmental, doesn't make you judgmental. Right. They are also using their lens to do it. So I think this desperate attempt to know real and fantasy, real and dream, real and imagination, that lining the day we'll be able to know that it's like the horizon. It's the meeting ground. You'll never reach it, but it is there. That's what this movie is about, that meeting point that you don't need to decipher. So it's not engaged in this manner, but it surely is touching each other. So reality and imagination will always coexist.
Right. So they are separate, but they're not separate, is what you're saying. Right. This has been really interesting, Swati, and I am sure that Freud and you would be really happy with the movie as well, as happy as we have been. There is a lot more to talk about Inception, a lot of layers to peel, and we'll continue to do that in our upcoming episodes. I hope you'll join us then.